Like, it's kind of nice. Yeah, I feel like and also when I talk to them, like, oh, did you ever come to school? No, I just
No, they were. I think that they interviewed people, but it was very competitive, and it was like their due date was like before NCA, and I think it was but I've interviewed with Westchester University.
How to say that without sounding like a dick.
Yeah.
It's just like your normal.
Philadelphia.
I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah.
You know, I knew exactly what I
I got my finger on the post. Oh, something will open up in May when I'm home.
All right. We'll come to order here. We're on a little bit behind, but should be okay. Can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, moving along. We need to postpone the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, 13th of November. Working on getting those downloaded. We live streamed those to Facebook, and we still need to figure out how to download it off Facebook so that I can get it on the YouTube. It's not entirely publicly available on the Facebook itself. So when we get that done, I will give you notice of it. We are live streaming again tonight with a little bit more technical difficulties. I believe that should still be working. Hopefully it is. Moving on to old business. First piece of business we have for tonight is the proposed increase to the general student fee for the information technology portion. I believe you discussed this a little bit in the last meeting that I was not here for on the 13th. With the statement from the undergraduate student government president, Toussaint Mitchell. They also have a resolution from the undergraduate student government. In the materials that I printed out for you tonight, the one that is on the 2-up sheet, which I don't have a copy of, yeah, that is, I guess, their first draft of the resolution, and the USG resolution that is on the full page is the one that they have actually passed on in their government, which there maybe is not enough copies of that.
Don't tell me that. I've got extras.
No, well, so there's two different sheets because they sent me the wrong version of the resolution first. So to make this clear, one sheet has our resolution R 1819.002. On the other side of that, there's a statement from Toussaint Mitchell, USG's president, as well as then an information technology resolution 19-01, which is a first draft of their resolution that they sent me in air. Then there is a USG resolution that is on a sheet all of its own that is full page. That one is the right one. Yeah, it looks like it made it all the way to the side. I don't have a copy of it here. Copy of that one. So that is their approved resolution. And so one of the big aspects of bringing this up again is part of the resolution that we have ourselves, which is our R 1819.002, is putting in context the motion that was passed October 30th to express GPSC's approval of the proposal for a fee increase in the context of USG's motion, if we wish to do that. And so you have those materials to consider. Basically, Toussaint Mitchell, USG's president, was expressing some concern over the total amount of money that this would be giving to the Office of Information Technology, basically a sum over $1 million annualized, with that $3 per credit hour increase. And ultimately, the resolution resolved for the approval of that proposal for the fee increase, I believe with a couple other resolves, which I don't have a copy of it in front of me, so I can't. What they say, therefore be it resolved, the IT department provide increased transparency with the student fee usage, including but not limited to a detailed yearly budget and expense report. Therefore be it resolved, the IT department establish a survey with at least 200 students campus-wide to express their thoughts on where the department should emphasize its increased funds first. Therefore be it resolved, the USG Senate moves to vote in favor of increasing the IT fee. And this was the resolution passed as amended in that first draft. It is on the copy of the resolution we prepared to express the council's support. And so I think how I'll proceed then is I can do a reading of our resolution, and then we've already passed a motion to basically author, to express this support of ours. And so I'll just read our resolution, and we'll have the opportunity for any discussion if we wish, make a motion on the acceptance of this resolution. So we have Resolution R1819-002, resolution of support for the proposed fee increase, information technology portion of general student fee, resolution for the consideration of the Graduate and Professional Student Council on Tuesday, November 27, 2018. Whereas the Graduate and Professional Student Council, the recognized constituency body of graduate and professional students at Southern Illinois University Carbondale under Board of Trustees Policy 3F3, has the power to act on behalf of its constituents for matters of university governance, including under Board of Trustees Policy 4A5 to review of fees assessed on students. And whereas on October 16, 2018, representatives from the Office of Administration and Finance and the interim assistant provost and chief information officer of the Office of Information Technology presented to the council a proposal for the $3 per credit hour increase to the general student fee assessed on students. And whereas the proposal for the increase is a $3 increase per credit hour to the current $7 per credit hour information technology portion of the general student fee, to thereby result in a $10 per credit hour portion of the general student fee assessed for the Office of Information Technology. And whereas the intent and purpose of this proposal was explained as necessary to provide sufficient revenue for the Office of Information Technology to sustain and grow its services, including but not limited to improvements to wireless internet services, virtual desktop infrastructure, and point-of-service IT support offerings for university patrons. And whereas it was explained the current $7 per credit hour fee assessed for information technology portion of student fees has not increased since 2006. And whereas a motion charging the executive board of the Graduate and Professional Student Council to compose a statement expressing council support for the aforementioned proposed increase was called and passed during the October 30th, 2018 meeting of the council. And whereas this resolution of support is presented to the council by the executive board as a means to expressing the council's support for the aforementioned proposal, therefore be it resolved, the Graduate and Professional Student Council expresses its support for the proposal to increase the information technology portion of the general student fee $3 per credit hour and result in, beginning fall 2019, to assess as a portion of the general student fee $10 per credit hour in fees for the Office of Information Technology. Entertain any motion for discussion, any questions as to friendly amendments, concerns relative to GSG's action, concerns relative to council's original intent for expressing support on this matter. Yes.
So at one point we discussed maybe revising our resolution to mirror USG's. Do we still want to do that, or are we just fine since they're also fine with it?
That is the question, and I believe it was tabled. Is that discussion or that question sort of posed in the last meeting? And so I don't know that we found a resolution to that question, or if we did settle that question. But yeah. So the tabling of it at the last meeting, essentially bringing that up. This meeting, whether or not we want to pursue any amendments to how we express our support in the context of USG's action on the proposal. Yes?
If I'm reading this correctly, it seems like USG had a little bit more, they're asking for more from the IT bill in order to show their support than we are in our resolution. And I have no idea if I'm allowed to, but I personally would like to see a little bit more of like what USG is doing as well from GPSC.
You're absolutely allowed to do that.
To say that.
What specifically that would be is sort of in what the question is. I didn't know. And so the big part of putting this on our agenda to at least consider is a process of trying to express support, which was the initial motion passed the 30th of October by the council, was the idea of do we need to put this into context of USG action, which at that time we did not have that understanding that they were going to add on these different aspects, or whether they were even going to support it or not, which initially there was the thinking that they weren't going to support it at all. So.
Would you, sorry.
Yeah, I kind of want to see what you're going to say.
Would you like to adopt the language as is from USG, or add in there like we fully incorporate and support USG's resolution?
I would like to incorporate the language of USG, I think.
Is anybody opposed to that? You want to make a motion? Or a motion?
Yes, motion to do that.
Second.
Motion seconded. Question. I don't have that in front of me. What specifically are we speaking to?
The therefore part, so therefore,
Yep.
like the last three on the full sheet.
I have a quick question.
1 second, I'll come to you. So I believe the best course of action, including for like just a friendly amendment to the language of this, would be to add the first two, therefore be it resolved. And then in their third, essentially adding to ours, something to the effect of, with those two items in mind, graduate special students.
Yeah.
I don't know what the best form of language would be potentially to do that.
So second motion's on the floor, or second motion.
Point of clarification you're thinking across?
I just wanted to, kind of what Clay just went off of with their last statement of therefore it be resolved, where they say they move in favor. I think if we want to incorporate the first two therefores, we need to specify that they need to meet those first two requirements. Because I think reading it, the USG one right now, it's just saying, we want you to do these two, but we're voting in favor.
I can agree with that reading, yes.
So,
Okay, and I wanted to not say that.
Those aren't condition precedents. So.
If we just add to our final, therefore be resolved, the Graduate Professional Student Council expresses its conditional support for the proposal.
So this resolution would not be supporting it outright. They would have to garner something to us for their support.
The two things that USG,
But I don't think the USG is calling for the conditional support based on these. They're just asking for these things.
That's right.
Yeah. So they're giving support. They want IT to also do these as well as giving support. So it's not predicated upon that happening. They're asking for that to happen.
so do we
Predicated upon that happening. Come on.
It's working. Sorry, quite the interruption. I believe the discussion that was just made is the conditional support is inconsistent with the expression of USG in their resolution. Is there a further comment on that?
So do you want to make a motion to amend the motion to that language?
Say that, Diana?
So So he's just simply amending, like adding just a little bit more to what you're saying. So I don't know if you want to motion that so it's clearly.
I think it's the executive board, I at least would consider these friendly amendments to the language of our resolution. So they don't necessarily require a full motion to pass them. Unless members of the executive board wish to dissent from that, I think we can consider those friendly amendments insofar we're trying to express with this resolution the will of the council itself. So writing it in live, I feel like that's a pretty friendly way to go about expressing the will. So we don't necessarily need a formal motion.
We just had a formal motion on the floor, so that's why I wanted to see where we're at with that.
We need to.
No matter what, or.
Yes, yeah, I would say that the question at hand is changing our language to expressing a conditional support versus not.
Yes.
And whether we have agreement on that, which may actually then require a vote if there's some disagreement. And so that is where our discussion is right now.
For me, thinking about what USG have written, since this is something that's going to the board of trustees on, in just a couple weeks, right? It's really unrealistic to have them check all these boxes. So I think that given that they came, spoke with us, and they seem to be interested in meeting our needs and the needs of those undergraduate students who made these requests. But I think it would be unrealistic to have the expectation that they could put out a survey, have the enough responses all in 2 weeks. And so that's where the language kind of I think also reflects and also that language reflects what USG considers. Alex.
I feel uncomfortable supporting it without that, just because after hearing them and looking at the stuff that they were talking about, and all of that, and then sort of doing the math similarly, it seems as if these are all sort of cosmetic things that are ooh, we have technology, but not things that actually help for that much.
So the discussion, so what you're saying, I just want to verify, because our discussion is, do we want to have it as an absolute to pass, or do we want it as something that is an expectation if it is passed by the board of trustees?
I would want it to be a conditional.
A conditional.
We support this if you do these things.
So your expectations are that these things are executed before the board of trustees meeting.
Sure.
All right, I just want to verify what you're saying.
They're IT, they can put it on black.
Would it be possible just to amend it to say to have the language reflect plans for a budget, plans for a student survey? That way it's still conditional, but not for it to be passed, as long as they have some sort of written and verbal expression saying you will abide by what you're asking for.
Maybe too late based on when the board meeting.
Yeah.
And also, they got this stuff 2 weeks ago, last Tuesday. So they've also had, I know it's winter break, but people were going on winter break, whatever, the holidays, last week break. So they've had ample amount of time. I say that holiday because I work at holidays. So they've had 2 weeks. And then they'll have another, 2 weeks before the next board meeting.
You're saying they've had 2 weeks to implement the survey?
Because they got this from USG already, right?
Kind of going on what Rachel said, I think that, so this fee wouldn't apply until the next school year, or not next semester. So if there was some conditional, I mean, it's not that unreasonable for us to ask them to put together a survey sometime within the next semester to kind of tailor their recommendations. So I don't see why we wouldn't have that set in stone, that we require that at some point, but it doesn't need to be in the next week, because that is a bit unreasonable given the upcoming holidays and the short time frame. But if they would have done the next semester and then take those recommendations into consideration, then I think that'd be reasonable.
Yes.
I think something to also consider as a part of this is even the way that USG's resolution is phrased, there is not a mechanism by which, if the IT department doesn't do these things, that they have the ability to rescind their support. But it's not just something that's semantics about the resolution itself, because it's sort of all in one. So what they're saying is we can support this along with our support of it. These are things that we also resolve to receive from IT. And so if they want their approval, that approval is tied to the notion of like, we've also asked for these things. But expressing support for it with conditions attached to it, we essentially don't have any power to compel through the resolution action on those things that we ask. We have other mechanisms through which we can compel these, like these departments on the university to do these things, but the resolution itself, its language would not have the power to compel that. So the idea of the IT department established a survey with 200 students, the resolution would express that in a written format, but it would not actually have the power in the form of a resolution to compel that. That's something that we can request as a part of what we do in the greater scheme of university governance and participation within that governance, but the resolution would not do anything but codify that in a formal motion that is written and delivered to the administrative bodies, essentially the system office and the board of trustees. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just have a few concerns. My first concern being with the budget and what our expectations would be resulting from that transparency. I guess my point is after having a conversation with Will Clark, the gentleman who spoke to us a few weeks ago, he stated that, you know, they have that information. We're more than welcome to go to his office and visit it. It's also a part of public records, so we can look at that. And if we're just saying, hey, we want to receive this budget and it's important for us to make this determination, well, what is our expectation? Are we going to say, well, you know, if your budget is $1.68 million, we don't want to increase it, then, well, they're telling us that already, right? So you can't just say, well, we want to see the budget. Well, what's going to come of that? And then similarly with the survey, they're saying, hey, we're going to do a survey of 200 students. Well, are you going to say, well, we expect that the feedback from that survey to be incorporated into however you guys spend the money? And I think just saying, well, we want you guys to give us the budget and then give us a survey, then I don't think that that's really beneficial. And I do think that Will Clark did outline how the money was going to be spent, talk about those 5 different initiatives, consolidating the help desk, adding a server farm, adding more wireless across campus. Those are things that are going to help SIU become more efficient and become a better institution. And I feel like it is not unreasonable to request a $3 increase per credit hour when an increase has not happened in almost a decade. So I motion that we pass the resolution as it stands and move forward.
Sorry. That'd be a specific question. Essentially. Would still need a second. Motion seconded. That is essentially returned to the question. That would put the resolution to a vote immediately. And so I will ask for those that would approve the resolution as written. All those in favor?
That's a quick question. Did we vote on the other one that was still on the table? Wasn't there?
There was a motion, that's like I'm saying, there's a motion.
We have not, yeah, we haven't
We have
resolved
not, and
that.
that was
We
seconded.
can't vote till we,
Yeah,
resolve that first one.
Uh,
Sorry, that's
If we would like to treat that motion to amend the language as a non-friendly amendment, then we can treat that as a formal motion. Ooh, man, that's stretching my understanding of it. Because it was seconded, we didn't vote on that motion because we moved to discussion. And we were in discussion, and during that discussion, someone made a motion and it was seconded to return to the initial question.
In the discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Just like Robert's rules thing, because it's like weird and in the weeds.
Yeah.
Friendly amendments also require votes, don't they?
On the basically initial motion, you just don't require additional motions to make changes to the thing that you're actually, make changes to the initial motion. So if I make a motion that everyone clap their hands, it's seconded, and then we move to a discussion, but then it's like, well, I would make a friendly amendment to that. So it's just like, well, first you raise your left hand, then you clap your hands. Like, if that's considered a friendly amendment, you don't have to actually vote on it. That's a completely absurd example of that, but that's the one that came to mind, so I apologize.
I appreciate it.
So friendly amendments don't actually need additional votes to be accepted as a part of the main motion. But if we consider that initial motion that was seconded for adding the conditional support, and those two therefore be it resolves as something that is not considered friendly, then we were in discussion of that motion, at which point someone made a motion to return to the question, which is a superseding motion.
That's perfect question.
And that's just my understanding of whether we have to take a vote on what would have then not been a friendly amendment to this language.
Which one is the not friendly amendment? No, I'm serious, because I think you had said before they were friendly, and then we started discussing again. So what's the one that's not friendly? I can't hear. I can hear.
If we're requiring a vote, it's changing it from friendly to non-friendly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Thank you,
the
Derek. That's what I was confused on.
And what I'm trying to determine is the fairness of which motion gets voted on first.
I was just trying to figure out what's friendly versus not friendly, and when did we move to not friendly? See, that's where I'm at. I'm like, what word changed it to not friendly? Right? That's why I'm curious.
That was it.
And it's ready to second.
Well, you're talking about the initial motion.
Because if it's still friendly, then the first motion is still.
I just motioned
That
to
was
vote.
Do it.
Yeah.
But if it's changed, then
Whatever
it's
one
second.
of them-
That's why I'm trying to figure out, where did it change? Where did it change? You see what I'm saying?
Let me, I think hers is the original motion that was not friendly.
No, I just said to adopt it.
Okay, after a little bit of deliberation, the superseding motion that was seconded was to return to the question before the council, which is a superseding one before an additional motion, which is for our intent and purposes now being considered a non-friendly one that was seconded, but the return to the question motion would take us back to the resolution that we have, the business before the council, the first action, which is the resolution as written without any amendments. Those being the ones that we mentioned about conditional support and the language from USG's resolution. So we will be voting on the language as this resolution is written. Since the motion was passed, it's superseding and returning to the initial question, the initial motion being this language of the resolution as it's written before you. So that would be passing the resolution 1819-002 as it is written. Everyone understand that?
I'm so sorry. I'm still confused when it moved to non-friendly, because you said friendly means that we could have voted on it. When did it go to not friendly?
My understanding was someone wanted to take a vote on that motion.
And that equals not friendly.
And yeah, if we're going to vote on making
That's all I
those
need to know.
changes,
Yep, that's all I need to know.
then it's not considered a friendly amendment.
Okay, got it.
And if I understand correctly, the motion that was passed to return to the business for the question, this language as written is not with the friendly amendments included, correct? Yes.
Okay.
So the vote before us is on the language as written on amendment, friendly or otherwise. All understood?
Yes.
I'll ask for those in favor of passing resolution 1819-002 as written. We should get a count here.
Yeah.
All those against?
Oh.
What?
No, that's not, doesn't count, yeah. Yeah, that's very different.
Any abstentions? All right, vote on the original motion, language as written, is 16 in favor and 9 against. Motion therefore passes. Consider that business done. Okay, moving on. New business, campus conversation series hosted by the Carbondale student trustee Breon Lockett. A special meeting this Friday, November 30th at 1 p.m. in the Student Center Building, Illinois room. The special guest is our interim president, Dr. Kevin Dorsey. I cannot state strongly enough to encourage all of you to attend if you're able on that day. I didn't print anything out for us. If you would like a hard copy of the flyer, I'm more than happy to send that out. I believe likely everybody has maybe received the email of the digital copy.
It's also on D2L.
It is also on D2L. I think this is a great opportunity. I can't remember the original language in your email, Breon, but this is an opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Dorsey about the overall direction of the system, including the Carbondale University. And the most specific part of that, which is why I wanted to bring something out now that I think about it, is that everyone has the opportunity to submit questions to you by Wednesday at 4:30 p.m., correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And those questions will be considered as prompts for the actual discussion on Friday. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, 4:30 tomorrow. And my email is just, if you type in on webmail, Breon Lockett, or B Breon, but I don't think there's anybody else there on this campus named Breon. If there is, fight them. But it is, so right there, so as soon as you log on to B2O, that's the first point right there. Then the flyer is in the hyperlink. Yeah. You have spelling on him, is also on that right there too. Just let me know.
It's has been pointed out, it's on the agenda. Your name.
Well, he says, yeah. Clay, I usually throw these away. So, it's right there too.
You want to take it home and frame
Burn it.
well, and so as a part of this new business, the announcement of it, the biggest thing is I just really wanted to emphasize it, and so I thought I'd put it on our agenda itself, in part so you have the information, including Breon's name, so you'll be able to find it via email, as well as the time, the location. But we do have an opportunity very briefly to discuss anything that we might want to submit as a body in the form of a question for that Wednesday deadline. That might be a question that ends up being asked on Friday. Yeah, really anything. I mean, obviously, everyone has the ability to submit any number of questions they wish to ask individually, but anything in the sense of a specific question that would sort of be, or questions that are coming specifically from the GPSC, I felt like we could at least start that conversation, and if that's one that you want some time to think on, go back to your constituents. Obviously, we're talking about less than a 24-hour period of time turnaround on that, but my email unfortunately goes to my phone, so I will see it if you send something to me, and we can try and do some turnaround on it. But I wanted to give us the opportunity to consider the idea of the body itself submitting any questions. Start that dialogue. Breon.
I do want to say, GPSC's recent letter to they presented at the last board meeting was used recently in talks with some of the stuff in regards to the future administration, people in administration. I spoke with the Dr. Dorsey. They said some of the questions I'm using came from GPSC and myself. So we are the board members of the board, and the president are reading what's sent and what's said. So I do want to shout out, that was important to share. And that was in regards to the selection of an interim chancellor. So, and, I mean, it helps that I don't let people sleep either. So, yes.
Well, thank you. Anything else on this item? Otherwise, I'll keep us moving here.
I want to, being that I attended the HLC meeting, because if you're not familiar, we will be having visits to our campus, and that will affect our accreditation. And so it makes it very difficult when you have an interim because they don't always have the privilege to take action because they are interim, right, to make those permanent changes. So my concern is since we have not, they are just selecting without any campus visitations or things like that from the potential interim, just a straight up selection. Is this an internal person, external person? Because those all have effects on impact of what can be achieved to meet HLC accreditations as far as what they've asked us to improve on.
So is this question?
And this was something that came up in the HLC meeting, that if you have someone who's internal, they might have more leverage. They might be able to do things more quickly. But I think that's, being that it's, I don't know, they haven't officially announced it, but they have just said, we're not going to let y'all choose or have these meetings. We're just going to pick the person, right? Which is different than if it were, as we had for Chancellor Montemayor, they had campus visits. So that's kind of my concern, is that this comes at a critical time.
So a question as to the impacts of the selection process as it relates to our ability to respond to the demands of the HLC reaccreditation.
Yes.
That's
Because
actually.
if he's not thinking about that, he needs to be.
No, that's.
I guess also include operational definitions for internal versus external. I think that's not seen a lot, because I have to question a lot of what the about doing.
Right. This is also random. I have a question. I have questions.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Brian, you held a wonderful meeting and kind of like creating a campus dialogue about what their decisions are as far as moving forward with the restructuring. And so that's something that is very much on the table. So President Dorsey had said, you know, immediately following the death of Chancellor Montemayor, he was like, we will continue within this vision. We will try to move forward with the restructuring as planned. But based on the conversations and based on the feedback on this campus, it's not something that everyone is for. Actually, it's the opposite. There are those departments that are for it, but there are those that it strongly disrupts. And so I'm very curious what his, I guess, what his plans of implementation is. Because from my understanding now, there's a motion on the floor that's being discussed amongst administration of that. If they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't. If it makes sense. I'm having a hard on. So for those who want to do it, like if this is something that is working well for you, I think that there are, like I said, departments, I would say computer science, things like that, it works well for them. So I'm kind of curious about that impact and how they see that being implemented in the upcoming academic year.
Yeah, I think that bleeds a little bit into the next item on the agenda with the upcoming Board of Trustees meeting on December 13th. Any form of statement or comments from GPSC we might wish to provide. We submitted written and oral comments at the emergency meeting that was just held a couple of weeks ago, November 9th. And yeah, opening up that opportunity. And I feel like what exactly the game plan is for reorganization is a big one. Reorganization will come before the board in that meeting. And in the statement that I submitted to the board, it wasn't the one that was provided. You guys were provided verbal comments. There's also a written that's a little bit longer since we don't have a lot of time when we go verbally address the board. I always submit a written statement in addition to the shorter one that I'll actually have time to give verbally. I speak in the latter part of the written statement about maintaining with our interim as well as the permanent president and permanent chancellor the notion of an agility and adaptation is a part of the process for how we approach reorganization, which I feel like has been an important part of how we've tried to address reorganization. And I think that that's something that we can revisit as a part of what we might submit to the board for this 13th meeting. Because there are a number of programs that throughout this entire process the faculty in those units are not interested in some of the proposals that have been brought forward in the last year. And indeed, there are those that are working on alternative proposals and maintaining sort of the notion that we're not locked into this thing. Like literally the entire last year, being agile and open to adaptation of the plans that may be initially proposed has been part of that all along. It's why we haven't seen any form of resolutions, RMEs going forward for many of the departments, many of the programs in COLA and MICLA. And so maintaining that openness to adaptation, the agility of what is determined to be in the best interest of those that are going to be delivering those curriculum, delivering those courses, managing those degrees, that's something that needs to continue to be part of the process in the same way that it has all along. So obviously some of the cliff notes on some drafts of what I might say and submit to the board there is essentially what I'm getting at. And it sounds as though that's something very consistent with what we might wish to express. This isn't something that we necessarily need to get hashed out here in this meeting, but I did want to bring that up, and this will be our last meeting of the semester, right? So anything in the sense that you want to contribute or your constituents bring up as you discuss things with them in these last couple of weeks of the semester, go ahead, feel free to send an email, schedule a meeting with me, however you wish to communicate that. You can also sign up to try and get public comments at the board yourself as a student of this university, as just a person in Illinois or otherwise. You have the right to do that. There is the public comments. You can sign up to give a public comment if you have a question on how to do that. We're more than happy to point you in the right direction on how to do that. And Diana, you have something?
Yeah, I just want to kind of also, as going back to the president, big issue that has been brought to my attention, both serving as a executive on GPSC as well as GAU, is that there's some programs that are having some difficulty with getting faculty lines to be opened up for them. And so they're losing faculty at a rate that like everyone in the department has to serve on their committee. And there's no wiggle room. That's all they got. And so I think this is really, it's, you know, Montemagno originally had wanted this like magical timeline of time to graduation. And I think that this also hinders that because people will be on sabbatical, things will happen. That will then create difficulty for these potential people who could be candidates on the job market, who you know, also just need a little bit more diversity of voice. So there's also departments where if you have that one you know, tenured faculty member who just stops giving fucks, that also makes it very difficult.
Rob Hunt. Yeah, just send me that at the email. I'm not taking notes. Yeah. And there's conflict, you okay? But there is strength in numbers, okay, everybody. Like I'm one person speaking to the board, right? And so there's like 8 million people sending out emails, they're, you know, speaking up at the public comments. That helps. Because I can vote yay, I can vote nay, I can abstain, but there's 7 other people or 8 other people that have to be persuaded. That's difficult with this board. So if you feel like you have to say something, please say it. Or assuming you go, I'll ask it.
And likely, I'll try not to bother you during finals week on this to a great degree, but we'll likely send out another email to all the members of council, just double checking, making sure that if you've forgotten about it, you have the opportunity to submit something as far as the formal statement, all the comments that I would provide to this meeting. But to try and keep us as best on schedule with our late start, I'll move on to the next item, which is employment policy or employee policies and academic grievances communication. Register there now. In addition to the agenda,
We've been meeting
Yeah,
for a while, discussing. Are we two-parting this?
I don't know.
You take it away. I'll pepper some in.
Yeah, so Derek and I, from the beginning that we were appointed to E-Board, we've been talking about the academic grievance policy and sort of some of the shortcomings of it, and we were tasked with reviewing and sort of suggesting some sort of adjustments, amendments, anything. And it was actually in April of 2018 that I don't know who from grad council ended up revising the academic grievance policy, but that hasn't been updated within the 2018-2019 grad catalog disseminated by the graduate school itself. So once we made it that far, we decided that we probably won't go forward with really addressing the policy itself, but really the way that policy is communicated at SIU. So basically, we would like to somehow take something to graduate council to say that we would like graduate council to make some sort of so multi-steps. We want GPSC to ask graduate council to ask whoever was responsible for communicating policy either via the graduate catalog or also all of the couple, I think there's like 5 or 6 different policy web pages on SIU's website, to ask everybody to update it for this upcoming academic year so that we actually have accurate information out there. And we hadn't gotten a chance to talk to the e-board about it yet because we haven't met. But I'd just like to hopefully open up discussion in case anybody has any other opinions or any support for what we decided we could manage to get some action.
If I could add to that, with that being our focus this semester, that would open up next semester after we ensure that the school is actually disseminating information in a way that's easily accessible and correct to graduate students. Then we can tackle potentially making it friendly amendments, or not friendly amendments, let's not use that term, making amendments to the policy itself and suggesting, things like having a, an advocate with you or whenever you're at the first steps of the process, offering, we've got a bunch of different ideas, but the main thing is it would be much stronger than us two at Graduate Council asking for this dissemination and this information to get out to the graduate students if it could come from the entire boys of GPSC.
Do we want to write a resolution of sorts then?
Is that what you do to, I mean, I don't, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, so a written resolution is essentially just a written format of a motion. Technically, the formal, like writing it down, calling it a resolution, it's functionally the same thing as a motion. It's just much more formal in that it's written out and that all of the justification for it is hypothetically already been made, so there doesn't need to be any discussion. It explains all the context, but right, functionally it gives you a written thing to then be able to very clearly and coherently, potentially comprehensively communicate what it is that you're trying to communicate to someone else, that you have basically passed a resolve or a resolution or a motion to say this is what we believe in, or this is what we're going to do, or this is what we are requesting someone else to do. And so passing a resolution would work. I feel with that, there would potentially be a supporting document that actually outlines things that essentially like a resolution, because it is just a form of a motion. It wouldn't necessarily allow for instance like bullet points, stuff like that. But yeah, it sounds like more or less writing a policy guidance document and passing a formal motion in the form of a resolution with that document to then take to what would ultimately be the graduate council to then also be implemented at the graduate school level. The graduate council is going to inform the policy and actions of the graduate school. Functionally, it's governing faculty body for the affairs of the graduate school, and then it would give the administrators within the graduate school the charge to then carry out that action, which would then trickle down to essentially what are grad program directors and how they would implement that. So whatever that would be, and that's the part that where it's like writing that into a resolution, it might be sufficient, or there might need to be an additional document that hits these sort of goalposts that outlines what it is that we're asking for. In the sense of you're asking for some kind of orientation, provide that orientation, things like that, that a resolution may not be the best format of it, so we can write an adjunctive policy document to go along with that. It doesn't have to necessarily be very elaborate, but you just outline some priorities.
I'm imagining that this resolution doesn't really need to be that intricate or long. It's do these things please, we need it, and you're supposed to be doing it. Here are some ways that you could be doing it that cheap, easy, efficient, sometimes free. And that could be the supporting document, some bullet points. But we just wanted your support that you would support us if we were to draft a resolution of this nature. So. Motion to vote.
Yeah, can I motion
draft,
to support this draft?
See, I think our idea is we want this done before graduate council.
Right.
So, okay. It would sort of be like a good faith basis that you trust me and Rachel to write a resolution that supports graduate students.
I motion.
So motion, seconded. Give a clear statement of what the motion for.
To move forward with recommendation in support of Derek and Rachel in creating a resolution as well as document guiding the revisions of our academic grievance process.
So motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you much. That sounds excellent. Okay. So moving on to officer reports. My report here, very briefly, or as quickly as possible. So from that Board of Trustees meeting November 9th, they did discuss the process and ultimately made a determination within closed session as to the appointment of an interim chancellor. Sort of to be determined on whether that is an external or an internal candidate search or potentially both being considered. I don't know that there has been a public dissemination of what that determination was, but there was very clearly said that it's not going to be a search with an open vetting process by campus body or constituents. And ultimately, the interim is going to be posted for what might be up to 2 years as we select a permanent SAU president prior to the appointment of a permanent chancellor. The Faculty Senate also asked the board to endorse the reorganization plan in the form of their executive committee's resolution. The Faculty Association made a statement insisting on clarity with reorganization to let what's been approved and supported move forward and basically just let the rest exist where it is. Search firm for a permanent SAU president was selected. I did provide my comments, written and spoken. We discussed, focused on the need to center the ongoing initiatives to improve SAUC on the students, both as a means and both as a measure and a means to success. Essentially saying that it's just like it's going to actually take graduate professional students to improve this place. Insofar that we teach any number of courses, create any number of papers, do any number of things to support the research and academic profile of the university. That's just like we actually play a pretty significant role. Let's actually pay attention to that. For the board meeting on December 13th, there likely will be the proposal for the Office of Information Technology fee. We passed our resolution for that, so as USG. We address elements of the reorganization process, progress, and plans in the course of that meeting. And we'll likely appoint an interim chancellor for SIUC in that meeting. GPSC should provide some remarks. We briefly discussed this. Again, you have a couple of weeks to submit anything you might like me to include or emphasize as part of our written and verbal statements. In a sense, restating our positions also for the interim chancellor appointment. For SIUC affairs, conversation series, I really cannot emphasize enough how great these have been. Student trustee Brian Lockett. Continuing this conversation series has been a valuable resource. I've been able to attend all but one of these so far and have learned a great deal from them. I encourage you all to attend. I don't know if this is something that will continue in the spring semester or not. And with that in mind, something that I might bring up is for us to consider, you as reps or GPSC as a body, to do something similar or even in coordination with the student trustee, Brian Lockett. Go down essentially and try and organize some of these at something like college levels or within particular programs or something like that, and we can collaborate, we can facilitate, we can reinforce what has already been a pretty fantastic thing that has gone on this fall. It's something I think we should consider going forward. So Friday, November 30th at the Student Center Illinois Room, 1 p.m. We already talked about hosting a special session with interim president Dr. Dorsey. So in a constituency head meeting, Dr. Dorsey was in a conference call. He did solicit characteristics and criteria from the heads of the constituencies on the interim chancellor. GPSC had already submitted our own statement. That statement was actually used as the prompt to get statements from the other constituency bodies. And there was the request for future future submissions within the next week, which is now passed. I'll continue that dialogue as well as we have this opportunity now on Friday to continue that discussion about the interim chancellor and what is desired in that. There was also the discussion of the Office of Information Technology fee proposal, its status. We had a meeting of the leadership of the student government bodies, student trustee Lockett, myself, and USG President Scott Mitchell, met with the Provost's office for a discussion of the reorganization plans following a conversation series a couple of weeks ago. It was pretty productive and interesting. Some of the key things that came out of that meeting was bringing up again the idea that there is a frequently asked questions aspect webpage online about the reorganization. And some discussion of the purpose of the reorganization to be retaining programs to create conditions for future success. And Toussaint Mitchell, USG president, discussed the creation of some student advisory committees for deans within colleges. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Wow.
All right.
We even talked about
Yeah,
that, and then granted, it's been a couple of weeks. Okay, so Brianna brought it up, and then somehow everybody kept saying, it's like, oh, Toussaint brought this up. That's a great idea. Fine. But the idea of some student advisory boards for deans of colleges was discussed and generally approved of in a sense, because COLA has a college council, and every college does not have the same kind of thing. And so that would be interesting to see what comes out of that. The graduate school, something that, Jordan, you may have more information on than I. The interim associate dean and director, Dr. Wallace, who's been acting in that position for the last year, her 12-month appointment is up in December. And essentially we'll need to follow up with that in the sense of if her appointment to that position is going to be renewed for another amount of time. I'm surely hoping it is. While I was vice president for graduate school affairs last year, I definitely found that she was fantastic in that position. And as president, that is continued as I filled in an interim basis for that position. So I'm hoping that as long as she wants that position going forward, that that they make that reappointment. I don't know.
Can we?
It's my belief that she does want it extended, but I think she's
Yeah, she's I don't know if
Germany.
it's research related or what, but yeah, she's out of the country right now.
Right.
There's like a statement of support of her getting renewed, that would help. I know, because she did great.
I don't think that hurt. I hope that it doesn't hurt.
Make that motion.
I motion that we make some sort of statement on behalf of we support the offer renewal for Dean Wallace.
Second.
If I can make a friendly amendment to that motion, I would say that we motion to express our desire for her to be reappointed to that position and express that motion in the form of a resolution at the next graduate council meeting for the graduate council to consider its endorsement of from GPSC. Yes.
Fancy.
Second? All right. Motion to express our support for the reappointment of Dr. Wallace as the interim associate dean and director of the graduate school, and then take that motion before the graduate council. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. That's very cool.
Thank you, Byron.
Very, very cool. We will have to get on top of that. Another thing that is a little weird, and I don't know that if everyone got this, this is literally something that I personally got in the email, and I imagine it affects others. So I got an email about my Bursars account and the credits for the primary care fee, which is essentially the health center fee, as a part of a GA contract. I received an email providing notice that the Bursar account was credited this fall with the full amount of the primary care fee, essentially the health care center fee. That with a GA contract, you have half of that fee covered by your employer, essentially your supervising unit. And so only half of it's supposed to be paid, and then you pay the remaining half as a part of your fee. But with the whole new general student fee structure, there was a lot of challenges and confusion on how to actually do that. Apparently, for some of us, or at least myself, I don't imagine I'm not anecdotal though, the entire fee ended up getting paid one way or another, or at least just taken off of your Bursar account. And so what was expressed in the email I received over this is that the plan is to just keep that full, taking away that amount from my student fee on my fall Bursar account. And then in the spring on my Bursar account, there will just be no credit of the half of the student health center fee. And I don't know if others got this same email. Yeah.
No more details on that.
Cool. Well, if there's any confusion about it, or if one of you does not have a GA contract and someone in your unit comes up and asks us about it, that's basically what it is. If you have further questions on it, refer them somewhere, either to GPSC or to GAU. Was there additional?
Dean Wallace came to the last meeting.
That's actually what I was going to say. Like,
So-
all of this.
As Dean Wallace, if you have
Yeah.
questions.
Oh.
So I was like, we're good, we're good.
I didn't see that part. Huh, all right. Very well. There you go.
Yeah, I
Sweet.
invited her to explain that. Are they?
No, that's,
Yeah.
No, that's great.
I didn't.
Cool.
He was
Oh, we're good.
He was hidden behind the
So GPSC affairs, so committees, please let us know if you have reports from committee meetings at all over the course of this past semester, concerns over your committee, questions, for instance, if it hadn't met or if you haven't gotten any contact over it. Feel free to submit reports. They can be very brief, or even just the agenda from these committee meetings to one of the officers, and we'll put that in with our records. Those with committee assignments on committees that have not met, if you could please come and speak to us after the meeting, that would be greatly appreciated. With the executive board, we're working to fill out the executive director's positions, set action plans based off of the strategic plan for this year. The winter break will hopefully allow us for a great deal of development there. Skipping over some details of that report, working on some bureaucracy stuff over the winter break, and really focus on Dropbox files and folders, getting the website files and pages and records updated, as well as the budget docs and fiscal policy docs put into place. And that is where I will end my report and hand it over to others.
Cool. My report, so as far as the career development travel funding, we have set a budget for the year thus far at $10,000, and $10,000 is very. So, yeah, or what I'm going to assume, because I didn't get to open up my computer, was on the prints here when I came in to, because I'm sure that we got submissions. So what I have clear paper in my hand is 8,400, but I know that there's some in our box. I just haven't filled it out in the process yet, which brings us to that 10,000. As I mentioned, though, we do have another additional 10,000 set aside. We haven't really gotten any feedback or information from the Alumni Association regarding our request. And so that's something to take into consideration because we also have had already requests for events that are coming up in the spring. For that, we only have $4,000 remaining. And so and some of those are really big events that are usually our bigger hitters as far as requested cost. And that includes the International Student Council that hosts a festival beginning of the spring semester, and they usually provide a pretty good amount of support on that, as well as some other events that are coming up. So, but we will determine what we want to shift towards travel funding for the spring, but at this time, it is, I'm going to assume, already at our current budget. Yeah, and our FAFSA, oh yeah, I'm done, that's it.
Yeah, I can tell that was something. Yeah, I still haven't heard anything back from the Alumni Association. Repeatedly reached out for comment. Haven't heard anything. We'll continue. So,
who do you reach out to for the alumni? Is that tied to the foundation?
The director of the committee that was going to review the applications is Executive Director for Corporate Relations, Kathy Stewart, and then the Administrative Executive Secretary for the Alumni Association, Tina Stevens.
Okay, so nobody with the foundation? And
It's not a foundation, yeah, no, it's through the Alumni Association specifically, it's not a foundation. Yes.
Right. From the executive committee meeting last week, they said that there's a possibility that there could be a special meeting before the 13th to announce the interim chancellor. So keep your ears open for that. Spring classes are now available, so make sure you register before you go on winter break. They want to make sure that the classes you need are available. There will be a professional development and research workshop for assistant professors, November 29th, that's in 2 days. It's aimed at instilling pride in faculty about the many opportunities SIU has to offer. The last SIU open house had 342 students attend, and that's an increase of 42% from last November, so that's pretty great. And by fall 2019, there should be marketing for some of the reorganized programs. And some of the RMEs that have been rejected, that's not final. It's only an advisory note. So there's still an ongoing conversation about this, and there's the opportunity for more RMEs to be created.
Questions on that report? Sir?
I'm gonna add on to that. You see how they've already spoken on, so they really can't do anything without the reorg being voted on. So since they're already making marketing materials, that's why when I say that strength in numbers, I cuss people out, but I need more people to cuss people out with me. Because that's something that shouldn't be doing because it hasn't been approved. So these are my frustrations. Like, that's why I need help. Appreciate you. That's it, I'm sorry.
We're throw down all the bucks.
Yeah, exactly.
For you. The fee allocation board not meet today, so that's that.
All right. Any reports from the executive directors? Executive director, campus community affairs.
Yeah. So as far as finals week sort of events go, I've been trying to collaborate with the graduate school and also Morris Library to see if they need any help disseminating information. And it turns out that the graduate school will be having a table with coffee and pastry and treat bags, and they'll have a cookie decorating station where they asked if a couple of us, maybe one, maybe two, they don't have a date for it yet, but they asked for some volunteers to help man that. So if you want to take a break sometime during actual finals week, probably not law people finals week, and you want to help people decorate cookies, you probably sign up for like an hour time slot. When I get dates and times for that, I'll send out an email asking for volunteers. Nobody else wants to do it, I'll decorate cookies, but I'd like to not be the only one. So that's what I got with that. Still, nobody has sent me any ideas for any future programming. I have a whole lot of ideas, and I'll be having a meeting with Clay, hopefully sooner rather than later, to discuss those and make sure that everything's kosher. But if anybody has anything they'd like to see happen, even if it doesn't happen this academic year and it wants to be listed somewhere for any future anything, just send me an email. And that's it.
All right, executive director of council government affairs.
We have bylaws, we have a constitution. I'm looking at it.
Nice.
That's it in my report.
Any questions? Hopefully none surprised that we have a constitution bylaw. And then, so I did see this part of the meeting last week, and yeah, I threw this on there as a graphics. We were in discussions about.
Oh, no, Vice President is our executive director.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to throw that on there because I haven't talked about it. But we emailed about it.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was watching it and I was just like, oh, yeah, I didn't communicate that, or we didn't get confirmation, but yeah, so I apologize.
Fine.
And we haven't had a chance to talk about it in details, but we did have some initial conversations about it, and I feel like we have a good grasp of it. And I think I even already saw some emails about passwords being changed.
Yeah, we are relaunching our GPSC Twitter account. It hasn't been updated in a year. So it's just GPSC_SIU. So please follow us, and hopefully we can figure out that password, and I'll start updating stuff on it as soon as possible.
Excellent. Any questions? Cool. Yeah, I can help you get the password set up because I saw it when I came out the emails in GPSC. Oh yeah, for sure. All right. Well, our last piece of business, which holy cow, somehow we actually ended up. That's nuts. Good to the order. So open floor for any announcements, questions, concerns, discussion, explanations. Yeah, absolutely.
If any of you guys have any like old blankets or anything, or if you have some extra cat or dog food laying around, there is some boxes at the Lesser Law Building, and we are accepting donations. We're going to be accepting them until Friday, I think, and then we're going to be donating them to local shelters. If you guys have anything laying around, we'll be happy to take them for you.
Cool. So they can be gently used like that.
Yes, gently used.
Also, a fellow grad student lived in one of the apartments of the house that burned down. So if you want to email me, I have I didn't want to like mass email because I don't know this about it. But if anybody wants to donate, there's a lot of different, we have like different stuff set up for him because all of his books are gone. So
Yeah, his whole because he was on the top floor, and so what didn't get fire damage got water damage from the hoses for the firefighters. So like the stuff is pretty much just all his stuff is gone.
So yeah, just email me if you want the links.
Yeah. So does he? I know that he's temporary housing right now.
He's
He's looking. What's that?
He's got a new apartment.
Okay, great. So does he need also things for his apartment, materials like?
They provided some stuff. The apartment's pretty small. I had to move stuff over there yesterday. And he also, his apartment, adult apartment was insured, so he was responsible in that way. But I'll let you know if there's anything specific, but right now I know this.
Good.
So, I'm aware there are committees. How do we get on committees and how do we find out what committees are?
I have that. What I can do is, I can even look it up right now to see what's available. But there's, I can give it's like the cheat sheet I gave earlier. Because I don't think you came to the first meeting, and that's where I had a good cheat sheet explaining what the different committees were. And I have that I can email everyone and give a report. Because some of those committees are actually, they're more than happy to have multiple people that can serve. And some of them they're very strict because they do so much. And they do have strict voting policies, and so. Yeah, but there's some that are still open, and some that, and also I always like to say this too, is that if there's something that's not being accomplished on this campus, you can also, put forth the effort to create something. So if something's not happening, for example, we had a representative last year, Lauren Schaefer, and she put together a mentoring program that had a late start, and that's going to be kind of like starting up again. That looks at it from administration to staff to faculty and students.
Yeah, that would be something that would definitely double down on in the sense of if there's not an opportunity to serve on a committee that's dedicated to something that you're interested in, or there's something you're interested in that even if there's a committee that exists for, it's not the most appropriate thing in the sense of what you're hoping to accomplish or get involved in, or if there's no committee for it, that those are things that realistically this council, our body, our organization generally should have an incredible interest in investment in creating those opportunities for students that want to get involved in those things, and then finding the mechanisms, finding the resources to make it happen. So if there isn't a committee or there isn't the opportunity to serve on a committee, whatever it is that any of us or any of your constituents are interested in doing, we'll find a way to make that happen in a meaningful, valuable way.
Any other announcements? Motion to adjourn? All in
All in
favor?
favor? Yeah, opposed? Motion. All right.
I want to get that one for me.
Now I want it. Now you want it. Now I want it. What's that?
Oh, that's why.
Oh my God. Where's the pizza that you got? Where's the Caleb pizza?
I don't know. It was right where that clipboard is. And now it's gonna be something.